Hi, and welcome to Dark Window. I'm your host, Jim Mann. Here on this program, I will be talking with many of the leading investigators, researchers, and authors on the topics of UFOs, UAPs, alien abductions, extraterrestrials, and a host of many other fascinating and related topics. So please join me and my guest for the next hour as we reach out. This is Dark Window on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Dark Window. I am your host, Jim Mann, and here in the studio with me tonight is a very special guest, James Keenan. James is an author and a field investigator. He has a degree in interdisciplinary studies from the University of California, Santa Barbara. His main focus having been anthropology and archaeology. He regularly conducts investigations, technology, data collection at sites around the world that appear to be connected to distant lost history and or unexplainable events. Some of the more well-known sites include Blind Frog Ranch, the Skinwalker Ranch in Northeastern Utah. His findings have led him to believe that the unexplainable and ancient lost history are partly linked together. This includes his extensive research into the giants of the Americas and their connection to the past Native American oral traditions. Now, prior to becoming an author and an investigator, James had a career in law enforcement, and he was a private investigator that spanned over 20 years. James has appeared on numerous radio and podcast shows. His television appearances include shows on the Travel Channel, the History Channel, and on Gaia. James appeared on season 2 of the History Channel's hit series, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And welcome, James Keenan. How are you doing?
Doing well, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
So we've got a lot to talk about tonight, and we've unfortunately only got an hour to do it, probably less than an hour now. You're quite traveled. I mean, you've been all over North America, and have you been to Europe and other countries?
Yes, all over the world. Wherever the phenomena is occurring, and depending on what the phenomena is that we're talking about, it hasn't just been localized to one area. It's worldwide.
Yeah, and now you've done some work up at the Skinwalker Ranch in Northeastern Utah, and we were all up there a month or so ago. We at a convention, and we met some of the people from the Skinwalker Ranch, and we heard some good talks from Dr. Travis Taylor and some of the researchers up there. And now you've been up there with some of your high-tech equipment. And what do you believe is actually taking place up there, James, at the Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah, so I think there's multiple phenomena occurring. And I think the biggest question is that phenomena attracting, or actually, is there an energy source that's attracting the phenomena, or is there an energy source that's creating the phenomena that we're seeing? And it's actually more widespread than just Skinwalker Ranch. A good portion of what we're seeing or what occurs actually takes place on this large mesa directly north of it, which Skinwalker Ridge is a part of. And the whole Uinta Basin and the Uinta Mountains, we're finding just so much high strangeness occurring. And the main focus, especially with the new technology, the equipment that we're using, the new types of GPR, ground penetrating radar, 3D ground imaging, geosurvey systems, is to be able to conduct a non-invasive search into the ground, underground, without having to dig. And the technology has been around for a while, but within probably about the last 8 to 10 years, it's really become very its ability has become more focused and is able to go down deeper, get better pictures or views, and helping us to see a lot more than what we were capable of seeing about a decade ago.
Yeah, that's quite an operation up there. Now you use this radar technology. Are you free to talk about any of that kind of technology that you use?
Sure. Yeah. As a matter of, I even on my YouTube channel, I've actually I've had so many people ask me what it is and they want to, purchase it. So I threw up a YouTube video on not every piece, but probably about 75% of the equipment that I use, especially the larger pieces. And the most important is we have a new dipole ground penetrating radar system, which is portable. You actually just carry it in your hand instead of the old lawnmower looking type that most people are used to. What's good about this is it's multi-frequency, so it's 500, 300, 100 megahertz that it's using. Before, the GPR that I had was 500 megahertz, so it was capable of probably going max 8 to 10 feet below ground. And now, as you reduce the megahertz at 100, we're actually able to go a lot deeper, probably around 80 feet down. And you lose some quality in the imaging, but at least you're able to see that far. And we've got a lot of different types of magnetometers, cesium magnetometers, vector magnetometers, new metal detection units that have built-in magnetometers into them so that we're actually able to tell what type of metal we're detecting below ground instead of it, just guessing. And a lot of people, when they have a metal detector, the max is probably about 10 to 14 inches they can see into the ground. And it costs several $1,000s before those can even tell you if it's maybe gold, maybe silver, or it's a ferrous material. The new technology that we have is actually able to go down 26 feet below ground, and it tells you exactly what type of metal you're detecting because of the magnetometer
Now,
built
yeah,
into it.
let me ask you this: Can you use that equipment on solid rock when you go up on? Now, I've seen plenty of pictures of the Uinta Basin, and they have that mesa, that whole ridge. That's all what, granite, or it's hard rock. Now, can you take that radar equipment up there and penetrate that rock? Can you get a signal back, or how does that work? Do you,
Yes, you can. And we also have geo survey systems. So remember, I'll start out with one type of unit, and maybe it's more generalized, the area, and we'll just keep changing out equipment and hone in or focus in on what we're seeing, or reduce the coverage down to what we're looking at. But yeah, so obviously, depending on what type of technology it is and what the ground is made of, uh, plays a part into how deep you can see. But a majority of the equipment can see down into the rock just as well as soil.
that's
And as a matter
incredible.
of fact, yeah, part of its job is to locate voids in underground cavern systems. So,
Can
you
you
know, and
tell if there's water in those voids, or
so it's it really depends on the math formulas that you'll use with along with the equipment to see if there's running water. It took me a couple years to locate how the water is running in a north-south in a longitude direction from the Uinta Mountains down through the basin, underneath the mesa, underneath Skinwalker Ranch, which was part of season 2, was showing these underground streams or rivers. So it's difficult to do it, and it requires a bit more not boots on the ground, but taking all that data collected, putting it through the software, and kind of working it out. And it takes a little bit of time to be able to at least see water features below ground.
now I watched that program, and now do you work when you're there? I mean, you get to work with Eric and Tom and Dr. Taylor. You get to work with all these guys all day long, and they're with you when you're doing your ground penetrating radar work when you're up there. And aren't you the one that actually found that triangle? Didn't you? Weren't you the one that found some stuff underneath that triangular area that they always talk about?
So remember, that's 41 minutes, during an episode of a show. And
Uh,
Eric and I had been talking for a solid year about what the possibilities were going on. I would give him the data that I collected from the south and north of the ranch, so that he was able to go through it himself. And from the data collected, I was 85% sure that there was going to be these magnetic field anomalies on the triangle, because it was just in a straight line from the other data points that were captured. And sure enough, it came back to exactly what the other locations had also shown from the data collected. That was taken with the vector magnetometer, so it was measuring amplitude, flux density, the amplitude, and because it's a vector, also directional, which helped for me to be able to locate the way that this magnetic anomaly was running, and it's transient. And possibility of that could be because of the water, that transient ability of this high strangeness is taking place.
I mean, in your opinion, there's something down there besides voids and water, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people that you really have two possibilities. And it's weird because you're in one location and you're getting like from a negative 14 microtesla all the way up to an 89 microtesla when you're reading the magnetic field at a specific location, which should never, ever happen. You'll have extremely minute differences depending on the time of day, where the sun is. But it should be like a 0.03, maybe at the most difference. So to have something from a negative 14 to an 89, that negative number meaning that there's less soil and there's cavities or voids. And then the higher readings is something magnetic, like magnetic rock or something else. But to go from a negative 14 to an 89, it almost seems like you have this void below you, and then a few seconds later, you have this massive magnet under your feet. And I don't know what to make of it.
This isn't a natural occurring magnet. I mean, this is way stronger than a. Well, I mean, I don't know, but maybe you do.
Yeah, we just don't know at this point if it's naturally occurring, if it's man-made or other. I mean, and that's the exciting part about this is, we're learning as we go, and there's just so many moving pieces. Here it's the whole movement of the magnetic field, which is insane. And I haven't been able to zero in on what it is. And boy, if we can find that out, then it's going to open up. What is this thing for? Again, is it creating phenomena? Is it attracting phenomena? Is it sending out signals? Is RF, EF, and EMF also a part of this? Device or natural capability? Who knows at this point?
A lot of mysteries at the Skinwalker Ranch, I suppose, but the series is a fascinating series. And Patricia has put up a picture there. Now, who is in this picture here? That's one guy there is Eric.
And, it looks like Eric and Tom Winterton and myself.
Now, what exactly is Eric's function there on the ranch? I know he seems to be quite a scientist or a really high-tech sort of individual.
Sure. So Eric is a physicist, and he's the lead investigator for the ranch. And so anything and everything has to go through him. When you see people come on board for an episode or something, it's because they have something to add to the puzzle that they've shown Eric, and he feels that it's something that could add to the quality of the data that is being collected and hopefully, fit just another piece into the puzzle.
Great. Now, let's, aside from Skinwalker Ranch, James, you've been all over Mesoamerica, down in Central America and even South America. What have you been doing down in that area?
So I was mainly focused originally in Mesoamerican culture. Like you had said earlier, my degrees, interdisciplinary studies with anthropology, archaeology. So I'm fascinated with ancient history, especially the stuff that doesn't make sense. What, I was being told just didn't make sense. It didn't
That's about
fit.
90% of it
Yeah.
sometimes.
It didn't fit with the oral traditions. It didn't fit with the data, the artifacts. And I'm not talking about everything, because there's a lot of stuff that you look at and you get it. It's normal. It was from these cultures and these civilizations from the past, but there's these one-offs that just make you scratch your head and you're like, this doesn't fit what we've been told. It almost mimics what we've been told was only mythology and folklore. And
Mhm.
that's what really interests me. And I'm passionate about finding out if distant, ancient, lost history really involved other beings or other species while humanity was here. Where is origin from for not just us, but for, if there are other beings that existed or continue to exist, where's the connectivity between Homo sapien and them? And Mesoamerica is just filled with all these anomalies that have been collected. And over the course of investigating down there, you started seeing all these comparisons that showed similarities between what's in North America and in the rest of the Americas. And, we've always been told that there wasn't this large diffusion of information and culture, that it was within only a certain uh, localized area. They didn't have the capabilities of traveling, and that's just BS. I mean,
Mhm.
as we advance more and more, and as time continues to go on, we're learning that we've had a lot of what we thought we knew is just incorrect. It's backwards. A lot of these anthropologists and the information is coming from the 18th, 19th, and early of 20th century, where they didn't even know what the heck an airplane was.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you have to match technology to technology, and we have that now to compare to what we're seeing. So maybe we've just lost the history on these cultures and civilizations that were at least as advanced as us, or maybe even more advanced. And you have these little crumbs of information through different people around the world, and how it all sounds the same is just insane to me. And the reason why it's the same is because it was all the same thing occurring, and there was this importing and exporting of ideas and product throughout the world. And we kind of just have to throw out a lot of what we thought we knew and be willing to move into the future with new ideas and new information, and not make science as much of a religion as it's become, but really to put it back to what science was supposed to be. Was, you're constantly finding out that you're wrong, and you're having to fix it. And I think
Constantly readjusting
exactly.
our understanding of history, of our history. Um, we we are indeed a civilization who has lost the record of our past. There's so much missing, you know. Um, you you do a lot of work with looking at the petroglyphs and the pictographs, and why is all of that so important to your work, James?
Sure, because unfortunately, we had people like the conquistadors and the Spaniards come in and wipe out all the codices and any type of written historical documents, because they thought it was work of the devil, through Catholicism. And we only have 4 codices, pre-Hispanic codices, that we know of. So where are we capable of getting that history? Well, there's only 2 ways. Well, 3 ways. There's artifacts that we find. There are oral tradition that have been passed down through these cultures that were here in the Americas. And then there's the only written, I guess you could call it, or um, embedded type of history, and that was into rock, which was carved, pecked, or painted into what we call now rock art, which are the petroglyphs and the pictographs. And this was the only way um, that they had back then in the past to communicate to future generations what was going on. And when you're talking about up in the Uinta Basin, the Uinta Mountains in northeastern Utah, I originally went up there for the petroglyphs and the pictographs because I was finding a lot of what I was seeing around the world there as well. And then you had these really strange anthropomorphic and zoomorphic and abstract features up there that you don't find anywhere else in the world. And lo and behold, as I was studying and documenting them, I learned that Skinwalker Ranch was just down the street or up the street from these locations, these sites. And I had heard of and knew very little about the ranch. And what I was seeing in the historical data, some of that actually was equivalent to what was taking place or having been written about around the 1990s all the way to the mid 2010s.
Mm. Now, the petroglyphs and the pictographs, is there is that just a different name for the same thing, or is there a difference between the petroglyphs and the pictographs? Is there a difference in just the terminology, or?
So petroglyphs are carved or pecked into the rock, and a pictograph has been painted onto the stone, onto the rock. So
Gotcha.
those are the differences. And unfortunately, the pictographs fade or don't last, depending on the natural elements that are occurring. Whereas we have a lot more petroglyphs that have survived, because they're permanent into the rock instead
Yeah.
of placed on top of.
Now, I spoke to you, I don't know, several weeks ago, and you were telling me about going down to Mexico, and you were recently down into Mexico. And what did you have a particular reason to go down there? Did you have something you were focused on, James?
Heck
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
I did.
Can you
Yeah.
share that with us?
So when I talk to other anthropologists, especially at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, they always tell you, oh, we found everything that could be found, or what hasn't been found doesn't matter. And I always wanted to prove them wrong. So I took some of this equipment. I have a 3D ground imaging system that fits around my ankle, and I hold the tablet. You can't even tell. There it is. Can't even tell I'm doing anything, and I'm actually
Yeah.
looking into the sites.
You would never know that you've got a piece of technology wrapped around your ankle down there.
Right. And right here, we're in Cuicuilco, which are the round pyramids in the middle of Mexico City, right next to probably one of the most used highways in the world. And
Oh, okay.
there were passageways running all over the place that aren't known. And,
Oh, no kidding.
the data, I actually posted the findings, and you can just see these tunnels running below my, where I was standing. And that just goes to show you we've lost history through many different paths. It's been hidden on purpose. It's in private hands of collectors. It's hidden away or forgotten about in museums and universities. And the other way is it just hasn't been discovered yet. It hasn't been found. You remember, a lot of these excavations took place in the the mid to late 19th century and the early to mid 20th century. They didn't have this type of equipment or this capability. What they did was they went and dug holes and hoped they ran into something, or they found it accidentally while they were building a highway or putting in a backyard. And it just goes to show you that there is so much information and historical data that's below our feet, and the answers are out there. They just have to be located and then dug up. And so,
Yeah.
like on Cuicuilco, there was all these passageways that nobody knew about. So now we do. We went to Tula, which is the pyramid and the temples where the Toltec cultures and civilizations. Yeah, here it is. A lot of people will know it by the Atlantean features, the large
Now,
statues.
okay, where exactly is this now?
That's directly on top of the pyramid in Tula in
Oh, okay.
Mexico. And what's crazy about this is the very first location that I tested, 2.9 feet below is a metal object that's probably about 10 inches in diameter. Now, I don't know if it's standing upright and I'm just seeing the top, or if it's on its side and it's 10 inches in diameter fully, but there's something, a metallic object or artifact, 2.9 feet, that was placed into the pyramid.
Now with this
Nobody,
equip, yeah, with this equipment, you can tell that it's metal
yes.
as
So
opposed to just a dense rock.
correct. So what it does is it's a magnetometer. So again, we're looking at the magnetic field, and there's all these differences between voids, spaces, soil, and metal. The conductivity is different. The field
Mhm.
around it that's generated is different. That information, and here it's perfect example, is taken and put through a software system, and color conversion it takes place. So if you look at the very top of the screen, you can see there's a void, and you can see the difference
Is that
that
that blue area up
that
there?
blue area, and it shows 1.83 meters and 2.2 meters versus zero point 0.03, 0.15. So there is a passageway or a hole or a tunnel system right there that starts there and then continues northward. And it's a lot deeper than the rest of the location, as you can tell.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So, did you actually make any amazing discoveries when you were there? I mean, other than the fact we now know because of guys like you and the technology that you use, that there's a whole another world under our feet in some of these areas that's really come to light in the last 20 years. But
Sure.
what amazing discovery did
Yeah.
you
See,
hmm.
and here you have a metal object in the red, and this,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
yeah. And so, what's really neat about the data that was collected at the Pyramid of Tula is the Toltec were metallurgists. They worked with a lot of gold and silver, and their pyramids and their temples were covered in gold. And what happened was when they were defeated or they had to leave because of some cataclysmic event, we're not quite sure, or if there was drought and a reduction in the crops, they abandoned the city. And what happens? You have people come and take
Oh, absolutely.
everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're reusing. They're reappropriating the material, not just the stone but the metal. And there wasn't a lick of gold or silver left on top of anything because it was taken. So there's a good possibility that the metal that we located inside of the pyramid may very well be some type of gold artifact or um, object.
So
And that's why it was such a what I call a hard hit. Um, you could
does
actually
your
even see shape to it.
does your technology tell you whether it could be silver, gold, copper, lead, mercury, or whatever?
So
Can
if
you?
I was able to have taken the metal detection units, I could have found out what it was. Unfortunately, I'm in Mexico, and you know how things work down there. So the best I could do was using the 3D ground imaging
Yeah.
system that I was able to, kind of covertly use at all these locations. So no, I don't know what it is. Yes, I have the equipment. Can I use it there? Absolutely not. I'd be afraid of what would have happened to me, or if it would, be taken. So
So on some of these trips down into Mexico and up in the Uinta Basin and some of the places that you go to, is it safe to assume that there's more there to be considered than just something from the natives, the Native Americans, or the Mesoamericans? Is there more there than just artifacts of the, what am I trying to say here, of the native people that we know of? So there's is the mystery deeper than that.
There is, and again, remember we were talking about when things don't match the way that archaeologists and anthropologists say that it's supposed to. They dismiss it at the drop of a hat. They're like, "There's no way," and they get upset because nobody wants to be told that what they've been doing for 175 years is not completely right. And they get their grant money, through this. That this is how they make their living. So for someone to come in and say, you know what, you guys have dismissed this historical data and said it's just mythology or folklore. It was a way that the natives, the savages, as they called them back then, were able to make understanding of things they just didn't know about because they were too stupid to understand the processes. And you're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I mean, look at the Maya. They had observatories that looked just like what we have today in Chichen Itza.
Exactly.
And that
Yeah.
was towards the end of their occupation and being incredible civilization right before they downgraded. But you got to think. So we have these mythology and folklore about other types of beings. We have the Chineke, which are these smaller beings or smaller people. We have the Uemas. We have the Kinametsen, which were giants in Mesoamerica. And you start thinking maybe everything that was told in oral tradition isn't, a story, but there's got to be some type of fact, some type of reality. All fiction is based in some type of reality or on nonfiction before it becomes fictional. I have a lot embedded in the books that I write. I write fiction, but a lot of it is,
Yeah.
what I've done in my life.
I,
And you start seeing that on the artifacts, in the stelae, in the oral tradition, in the petroglyphs, the pictographs, you start seeing these beings and these creatures, and it's over the course of all over the world.
mhm.
And how can that be? How can the same thing be in Egypt that we find in Peru, that we find in Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City, that we find in the Yucatan, that we find in New Mexico, in China, in Cambodia? Give me a break,
The similarities are uncanny, aren't they?
or identical in some sense in certain locations around the world.
Yeah, Patricia, can you put that one picture back up there of those figurines and those little figures in that? See, now, are we to assume this is what the Native American people or the Native Mesoamerican people looked like?
Right?
Why were they making these little figurines, and who were these little figurines supposed to be?
Exactly. Why were certain objects so important, or abstract features used so much, or anthropomorphic beings that look the same always being used? And it's neat because I'm glad you brought this up because, when I look at a statue, a figurine, or a petroglyph or pictograph, what I always do first is I'm counting the fingers, the digits on the
Oh, really?
hands
Okay.
and the feet, because they knew what they were doing. You'll find most of these figurines and most of these petroglyphs with 5 fingers, you know, clear as day. But then you see the really strange ones that have 3 fingers, or the really large in stature figurines and petroglyphs that have 6 digits. And
I've
you
seen
just
those.
match up with what we know. I mean, I consider the Bible historical data. there was historical data being collected, and sure enough, you have these giants in the Bible that had 6 digits on their hands, 6 digits on their feet. Same in the petroglyphs. You have in the McConkey Ranch, which is Dry Fork Canyon petroglyphs in northeastern Utah, you have this massive petroglyph where the central figure is approximately 7.5 feet, 6 digits on each hand, and the biggest feet you've ever seen. Well, the anthropologist is going to say, oh, it was just an anthropomorphic figure. That's just how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look around. This rock art goes on for about 500 feet. And you have this one section of this, and then the rest look like human. So, give me a break.
Now, you've done a lot of work, or you've done a lot of investigating and researching these ancient days with the giants. Do you find record of giants in Central America and South America?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, some of the codices, the post-Hispanic codices, are filled with this. And you go into the Catholic priests and the friars that were here, and they actually logged seeing some Native Americans walking around that were well over 7 feet, and well known that it was a constant. It wasn't a one-off. And you got to think, I don't know many Native Americans that are over 7 feet that had blonde hair or red hair.
Yeah.
It wasn't just seen by the Native Americans. This was seen by the conquistadors. This was seen by the Catholic priests, the Catholic friars that were here. The data was collected firsthand, not always secondhand knowledge. So, and then again, it gets dismissed because if there's a one-off, academia doesn't know where to put it. So the best way to get rid of it is to put it into a drawer or on a shelf in the back room. And I've been into a lot of those back rooms, and you'd just be amazed at what's back there that needs to be reevaluated.
Why don't they bring that out and display it to the public?
So there's a couple reasons, Jim. The biggest one, again, is no one wants to rock the boat. If you have a good university job or a curated job, or you're an archaeologist for a museum, or you get paid for sticking to what the paradigm is, what's going on. The only way that you can do these excavations is by getting grant money funding. And if you go out there and you say, hey, I'm going to look for humans that were 9 feet tall based off of this, they're going to laugh at you. They may actually want to know themselves or somewhat believe it, but they can't. They just can't come out and say it because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them, from a professional standpoint. And is their funding going to be cut off?
So it's kind of like that. It's not that we haven't found these artifacts. It's we just don't have an explanation for them, and therefore they don't go out into the museum for the general public to see because we don't have an explanation.
Yeah, they're these one-offs, and don't get me wrong. Sometimes, they make it out there because nobody took the time to really pay attention. Gilcrease Museum it just got razed to the ground. It's being rebuilt in Oklahoma, and they have some amazing Mesoamerican pieces that seriously look like nothing I've seen elsewhere. Maybe it matches some of the petroglyphs and pictographs, but some of this does make it out there, but a lot of the times it's accidental. It's the oldest pieces. And what do they put on the plaques? Unknown culture, unknown race, unknown time, maybe due to magic or, shamanism. That's what is on these plaques. And you'll get a few of those at the National Anthropological Museum in Mexico City. There's actually a couple Olmec pieces that look like they're Persian. They look like the jinn. And there's no doubt about what you're looking at. If I were to move that over to the Middle East, you'd think you were looking at something that was pulled out of the ground in Iraq or in Kuwait or in Iran.
So some of these little figurines and statues are uh, they look like they're not even on the right continent. They're from an
Exactly.
entirely different part of the world. So why are they? What are they doing in Central America? And
Sure.
how is it that those folks knew what someone looked like from the South Pacific? I see those questions come up all the time.
Oh yeah, and this is the main focus of my study and the hypothesis that I've been working on. A lot of people think I'm strictly a Skinwalker Ranch, Northeastern Utah person, and no,
Yeah.
my passion is in Mesoamerica because there's far more high strangeness going on there than anything we see in Utah. And what I've been creating from all the data that I've been collecting is that we know that the oldest culture are the Olmec. And up until 1942, everybody thought they were Maya. They didn't know there was a different culture. They were scratching their head, wondering and thinking maybe, but everybody was too afraid to call it what it was. Finally, that occurred. Well, there's this proto Olmec. There's these other objects and artifacts that predate the Olmec that we don't know about. And what's crazy is there's this location called Chihuacan just south of Zihuatanejo on the west coast of Mexico on the Pacific Ocean that the city Chihuacan, we actually found a stela that had the name on it, which is rare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the Chihuacan is the calendar masters or the gods that controlled time. That's the translation. And you're like, oh my God,
Oh,
you
really?
know, why are they calling that? And we have every culture that we know about from Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Mexico, traveling all the way to Chihuacan. And we see the Olmec, we found Maya vases all the way over there, which is 475 plus miles away. And you know what this is telling us is that we had a melting pot before the United States here. There were people from all over the world, and that's why you have objects that look Asian. You have objects that look like they're Persian. You have objects that I don't know what the hell it looks like. It's beings that I've never seen. And they said, oh, they were going to worship the gods or to give, you know, something to the gods. But what if the gods, what if they were walking among the people? What if they were going to see the gods?
That's
And
the
what if
next.
the gods that we're talking about were giant in stature and were just the end race, that those that survived a major cataclysmic event? And I'll say it, the deluge was the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and these were the people that they weren't building the pyramid of Cholula, they weren't building Teotihuacan, but they were the architects that were leading the build and telling the humans that were the workforce how to build it. And it's just incredible because you know this wasn't supposed to happen. People will tell me I'm full of BS, but look at the data. I don't know how much longer the one-offs can be put into a shelf or on a shelf into a drawer before you got to you got to see the big picture, that there was this diffusion of culture. It was all over the world. We had seafaring people. There was import export coming to Mesoamerica. Um, there's certain objects of what we know as the Olmec found as far out in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible? We see Sardinian giants that are found on Sardinia, identical in the petroglyphs in Utah. They look identical. How is that? Because they
That,
were the
that is,
same. They were all over the world.
that's quite a mystery. We could talk about that for hours, couldn't we?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, we're running up on time. There's a couple of other questions here that I'd like to talk to you about a little bit, and this might be a little bit of a loaded question. What is the government's interest in the Skinwalker Ranch? Just getting back to the Skinwalker Ranch for a few minutes. What do you think the government's interest is up there? Hence, ASAP and the Robert Bigelow, the Bass team. What why are they all interested in that in the Uinta Basin there? I mean,
So I think that when you read the books, they're pointing towards whatever the phenomena is, they're trying to copy it. They're trying to, um, and things that are happening on Skinwalker Ranch almost look like the Havana syndrome. They look like these directed weapons that we now know exist. And I'm not so sure that that's all completely truthful. I know that a lot of what was collected and told was bogus. It didn't really happen. People were looking to be bonused or to keep their jobs during the Nids and Bass era.
mm-hmm.
But one thing I do know is that is for sure is the people that were there were being used like guinea pigs. They wanted to know what would happen to humans, physiologic, mentally, all this, what the phenomena did to human beings. And there's data now coming out, stories coming out now of, the guards and other people that were being sent out for testing. So, in OSAP, obviously it was government funded. So a lot of it will always be classified. We're only going to get bits and pieces of what happened. But I believe that the truth is now starting to come to the top, and we're going to. Well, I would love to see maybe congressional hearings as to where $23 million went. First off, um, that
Wouldn't we
was.
all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, absolutely, because just in technology, you look at what was in the Bass technology room, and it was maybe a few $100s worth of tech. So there's a lot of stuff that makes me scratch my head and wonder. And when you look at what they submitted to get the contract, several of those, like remote viewing and all that, was what the government specifically said they did not want them to do. They did not want to happen. It needed to be based mostly on UAP study. And when you look at who was in charge, who was doing what, that seemed to be their number one thing, was they were interested in this consciousness that exists all around us, and abilities that we all have, that of remote sensing, remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely interesting. And I don't think that I think maybe people need to question the money trail and see really what else was taking place other than just what was written about, because there's not a lot of proof that's come along with the stories that have been, told. And a lot of those stories were secondhand. They weren't even firsthand information.
Well, the mysteries continue, don't they? And
They do.
we didn't talk at all about Blind Frog Ranch issues, what's going on there, or we touched a little bit about. Were you ever on the Ancient Aliens program, James? I think you were, weren't you?
No, no.
You haven't been on that program yet.
Yeah, I was with Prometheus for Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. They do both of the programs.
Okay, they do both the programs.
Right.
Well, Patricia, can you put those links up there to some of James? Well, James, tell us a little bit about what's going on with the information up here.
Yeah, so the Amazon is where you can go to the link for my books. Again, they're fictional, but there's a lot of hidden information in there, especially the latest book is the first time I've included photos, which is kind of to help clue people in on what's going on. The YouTube, I've finally decided a few months ago to put all my research out to the public. So I started making a lot of YouTube presentations, and it goes into more detail about, the lost history, the cultures, the phenomena taking place around the world, specific locations. And then you can also follow me on Facebook at the Facebook URL that you see there posted.
So for those who don't have who are not seeing this program, but they're listening to it, your YouTubes, where should they go? Just YouTube James Keenan? Is that?
Yeah, the YouTube channel is James Keenan, Giants and Paranormal.
Okay, so if they were just to go onto YouTube and just type in James Keenan, they're going to get a whole series of your YouTube videos.
Sure. Well, they might get the lead singer of Tool since we have the same
You know
name.
what? I forgot
So,
about
yeah.
that.
So you may want to put James Keenan Paranormal at least, and it'll bring up
Yeah.
all my stuff. Otherwise, you'll be watching Tool videos all day.
But you've got, how many YouTubes have you got out there? I've watched. Well, you've got a whole YouTube channel.
Right. There's 42 video presentations so far.
Wow, that's incredible, James. You have just done an enormous amount of research and boots on the ground kind of stuff. You don't do your stuff by proxy. So we're just about out of time here. I want to thank you, James, for joining me tonight. And, it's just been an interesting and enlightening conversation, and we could talk and talk. But again, thank you for joining us, James Keenan. And we're pretty much out of time. So
thanks for having me, Jim.
Yeah. So along with James Keenan, I'm your host, Jim Mann, and along with my program manager, Patricia Wilkinson, I want everybody to please join us again next week for another engaging conversation as we try to shed a little bit of light into some dark windows, so to speak. This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting. This is Dark Window, and I want to say good night.